In midsummer in the Pyrenees, every year there is a migration of almost 1,000 head of cattle arriving from Spain and entering France by a pass over 7,400 feet up, an adventure experienced by a few Spanish farmers for over 3,000 years. This film tells their story.
If they make such a long journey, bringing the cattle so far, it's because their mountains from the end of July onwards are dry as a bone, not enough rain. The grass has been dried up by the sun, so they come to France and discover green mountainsides, tender grass. It's magnificent for herds here.
If these routes still work, it's because there have always been on both sides of the mountains men who understood each other, who were able to keep the traditions going and even strike up friendships.
When I was only 15, my father used to take me to Spain. So the people of my age, I've known them since I was 15. And when I became an adult, they knew me and needed a link with Gavarnie. And as the person who was there before me was older, I naturally took over the job when the time came, above all out of friendship for them. I'm also lucky enough to have a granddaughter who loves walking and loves the mountains. So in the last 2 years, she has done a quarter of the trip, then a half, and I reckon that this year she'll go all the way to the lake of Bernatuara.
In a few days, the Spanish farmers will set off on their 3-day journey, covering over 70 kilometers, running alongside the Ordesa National Park on the Spanish side, then plunging down into the heart of the French Pyrenees National Park. It's a difficult journey and a spectacular one.
But that's just part of our culture, dating back to the 17th century. There have always been people like me doing this. It's not a job, it's a passion.
The 17th century is often mentioned as the starting point of the Bernatuara transhumance tradition. But in the departmental archives in Tarbes, an archivist dates the tradition back not just a few hundred years, but a few thousand.
This migration of Spanish herds northwards is particularly fascinating, as it's a phenomenon which connects us to a very ancient period. Present research suggests that herds from the south came to graze in the Tromuz and Gavarnie zones 1,000 or 2,000 years BC, so that's 3,000 to 4,000 years in all. And it's very interesting to note that whereas all agricultural practice is evolved enormously, here we have a basic tradition being carried on and which really works for very concrete reasons. It's not just folklore, it's a living practice which links us to our ancient predecessors, and that's really very moving. Here we have in front of us a document which we're lucky enough to have preserved. It dates back to 1319.
The document is written in Gascon and contains dispositions about the management of the mountains on the French side. It mentions very clearly the exceptional rights of Spanish farmers.
It says that all these dispositions apply, except acceptat en los ports un los spans an paruenzo. That means except the mountains, where the Spanish have grazing rights.
That 7 centuries old sentence shows that in 1319, Spanish herds were already coming to graze in French valleys. But in their soil, the mountains keep memories of over 3,000 years of these journeys, and tomorrow, a new page will be written. It's 6 o'clock. Jorge Castilla is on the first stage of the migration, gathering his cattle from the surrounding mountainsides and setting off with them to France.
Transhumance, for us, is a way of life. It's nostalgia for what we have always been. It's part of our roots. The first time I went to France with the cattle, I was 8 years old. And I remember very well seeing the cattle climbing up. I also remember very well seeing the fog coming up. And that scared me a lot because I was afraid of getting lost. My daughter was 7 when she accompanied her first transhumans with the cattle. It's a very sentimental question with us.
The herd is well on its way now, starting its journey by going through the first pass. Further along the valley, another farmer, Enrique Ramon, is coming down from the mountain after collecting his cattle. It's time for Enrique and his family to check the health of the herd.
Today is a difficult day, full of stress for us and above all for the cattle, because they were comfortably installed on the mountainside, and today we brought them home. We look at the reproduction situation to see if the females are pregnant or not, and that's a source of stress for them. But tomorrow, they'll be able to rest up at Sandajuelo.
By heading out at 4 a.m., Jorge, Enrique and the other farmers hope to reach the Sandajuelo plateau by 11 o'clock.
It's the second day of the transhumance, the climb up to Sandajuelo. The path is difficult, very stony, and the cattle are leg-weary from all the kilometers they have clocked up walking through the night.
After a very steep slope, the animals find their way back into the sun. Then there's the Sandajuelo plateau, where they're going to rest before tomorrow's crossing over into France. The farmers are beginning to feel anxious about the climb up to the Bernatuara pass.
So many dawns, so nervous. Above all, the night before when you can't sleep, because you know on the next day you're crossing into France, and you never know whether you're going to get fog or rain.
It's a mixture of nerves, stress, and also some emotion.
There's a strong wind, but the sun is coming up. It's going to be a fine day, but the game is not yet entirely won. Leaving Sandajuelo and heading up to the Bernatuara Pass, it's an almost 700-meter climb for the animals, whatever their ages.
It's very surprising to see just what sort of terrain a cow can navigate. The only problem for them is an excessively dry or snow-covered track. But if they can find a foothold, there are lots of places where they can advance and where a person couldn't. There are also certain breeds that are more agile than others, but we are still surprised to see where they can go.
After almost 4 hours of strenuous effort, the herd nears its goal, the Bernatuara Pass, the way into France.
When you arrive at the Bernatuara Pass, It's a comfort to think that there are people waiting for you. That seems to me to be a very positive thing. I find it moving, and it really motivates me.
You see the cattle? They set off 3 days ago. Enrique's go right to the bottom, a bit above where we park the cars.
Near the hut?
Yes, above the hut. And they stay there all summer. So are you happy to see them? You haven't seen them since last year.
Once again this year, the animals got through. They're worn out by the adventure. As for the farmers, they can begin to relax a bit. It's time to see their old friends again at a lunch organised by the Valley's Farmers Association.
It's important that my son continues this transhumance, because it really is a continuance of what my father and grandfather did, and I hope my grandchildren will carry on.
Y espero que él lo sigan haciendo.
Two months have passed since the crossing into France. During the summer, Roland and the farmers came to watch over, care for, and feed the herd. But today, it's time to start the journey back into Spain.
How did the summer go for the cattle?
It was a good summer. The grass was good. Only one cow died.
Oh, just one?
Yeah.
Okay, hope everything goes for the best. Gather all the cows. Don't leave one behind.
Finding where the cows have got to on the mountainside is always a hard task, rife with unforeseen difficulties. This year, things seem to be particularly complex.
We are missing 49. Dad, Diego has just arrived from the corner. He's here at the hut.
Little by little, the herd forms. And just as the sun begins to shine, the numbers seem correct and the departure imminent.
The cows are scattered all over the place. We brought a lot of hands with us to be able to cover the ground. We've almost finished. I think they're all here now.
The journey back has begun. The animals advance on an ancestral path they have used for years, the one that leads once more to the end of the Osu Valley, back to the Bernatuara Pass. The men and their herd finally get to the frontier between France and Spain, marking the end of summer and the transhumance.
Choosing to raise cattle is a complicated decision, but the most important thing for me is not the job you choose, but where you choose to do it.
We've got no fields, no land to farm. The best thing we've got is our mountains.
The Bernatuara adventure is one of the great stories concerning our mountains. It demonstrates how indispensable collaboration is to life at this altitude. Perpetuated from generation to generation, this transhumance has molded the culture on both sides of the frontier and shows how the mountains can bring men together.